was really hoping, when the news hit yesterday and just the shock of Charlie's untimely death as a young 31-year-old father,
31.
husband with an entire life supposed to be ahead of him. I was hoping that by now I would have done a little bit more processing and be able to have collected myself a little bit more than I did yesterday. And I'll be honest that I haven't.
Yeah.
This is just absolutely devastating news. And anyone that I speak to is equally as devastated and somber and praying for Charlie's wife, their two children. As someone who's obviously married and has children of my own, just that dark thought of being in that situation is unfathomable. And I thought I would have more words, and as a commentator, I just really don't, other than trying to uphold the legacy that was Charlie Kirk and his ability to tap into the political will and political power of young people across America.
Yeah.
And, the ricochet effect that we can glean from that here in Canada, where he built this, over the course of several years, he built this massive movement through the very same events that took his life yesterday at a university campus in Utah. It's so disturbing that at a place that is supposed to ignite discussion and debate and critical thinking, and it could also be the site of such political persecution and prosecution, as you say, and assassination. He reached millions in his podcast, and that is such, other than the obvious loss to his wife, his family, his children, that is such a loss to the young conservatives who he was influential in initiating that open discourse and that dialogue. And I think the only thing that Charlie Kirk is guilty of here is having respectful, open, public discussion about controversial topics that, the establishment would rather you just cower away from. And sadly, I think there will be two sides to this situation where it does serve to stifle that discussion for people who may be terrified now, even more terrified than they were previously, into submission to the narrative, to the establishment. But I think it will also serve to embolden people to live his legacy through and live on by saying, no, we need to make sure that we continue to have these conversations. We need to continue to have this dialogue. And I really hope to see more of that, because there are so many amazing clips, and I hope we can go through some of them, of Charlie Kirk's speeches, his talks, his debates, his discussions that we will not let die.
Yeah. I mean, there are things in recent history that, you can remember exactly what you were doing when you heard the news. Like, I remember what I was doing when Princess Diana died. I remember what I was doing when the towers fell. I remember exactly what I was doing when I found out that Andrew Breitbart had died, because you just knew that these were things that in an instant changed everything. Mm-hmm. And I know exactly what I was doing yesterday, and I don't think I'll ever forget, because and I was giving some thought to this because it is 9/11 today. And I remember the coming together of everybody post 9/11. Like, everybody was an American that day.
Yeah.
And this is the opposite. That even people, like the people whose rhetoric led to the weaponization of the person or persons who did this, still won't shut up. When you go around telling everybody that, you go around telling the punch a Nazi crowd that not only is Charlie Kirk a Nazi, everybody who agrees with Charlie or even just agrees with his viewpoint that we should engage in civil debate, they're also Nazis too. Oh, and by the way, they're also genociding you by not affirming you. Well, then what would you do if someone was genociding you? You would meet them with deadly force. And now we've got it. And you would think they would have changed after Trump was very nearly killed twice on the campaign trail, but you still. I also remember where I was when I heard that Steve Scalise was shot in 2017 while playing baseball. That was a attempted political assassination, and you think things would have changed then, but no. You keep saying, like you as like us as a society, we keep saying this. We got to bring the temperature down because somebody's going to get killed, and then somebody gets killed, and the temperature is just as hot as ever. And I don't know what to do with my anger today. But there are plenty of people on our side who have been throwing around the word Nazi, trying to get liked by the Punch a Nazi crowd, maligning their critics. And I don't think we should let those people recede into the bushes, embarrassed Homer Simpson meme style either. I think those people need to be called out tougher than ever. Let's get, I could just rant about this forever, but and we do have some guests on the show today, hopefully,
yes,
that will join us. We've got Libby Emmons. She's the editor-in-chief over at Postmillennial and Human Events, and we should have Viva Fry joining us later in the show, David Freiheit. He's a Canadian in America, so I think he has a unique viewpoint on this. But you wrote this up today. Tone-deaf mainstream media host fired following Charlie Kirk murder commentary. I hope there are many, many, many firings coming up in academia and otherwise, and we'll get to those. But tell us what happened here, Tamara.
Yeah, and before we do, it's not to say that anyone should be, the government should come after people.
No, I don't want them arrested
for wrongthink, but to be so out of touch and so tone deaf to the tragic loss of life of a father, a husband, and someone who had amassed such a massive following, bred from positivity. I view Charlie Kirk's commentary as positive, open dialogue and discussion that is obviously so desperately needed in this world. And so here we have the first of, as you mentioned, Sheila, perhaps a string of firings that will take place. But this comes from an MSNBC political analyst, Matthew Dowd, who was fired after suggesting on air, right, like just as this was breaking news, that Charlie Kirk was somehow responsible for or contributed to his own assassination. And I'm going to read through this article while also throwing to some of these highlights, because I think that it is so important for everyone to see the kind of response that the mainstream media and the collectivists are having to this tragedy. And I think it was Charlie Kirk who actually said himself, you can judge someone by how they react when someone dies.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done in this. Well, I haven't judged them. I mean, I'm sure you can glean, but I've just broken down who has kind of said what. And so let's read through this. MSNBC has canned political analyst Matthew Dowd after his jaw-droppingly insensitive remarks following the tragic assassination of conservative firebrand Charlie Kirk. During a live broadcast, Dowd essentially implied that Kirk's bold, unapologetic takes on everything from gun rights to civil liberties somehow invited the bullet that ended his life at the young age of 31. You can't stop with these sorts of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and then not expect awful actions to take place.
Right. He shouldn't have been wearing that short skirt if he didn't want all that unwanted male attention.
Oh, we'll get to the victim blaming. Yeah. He said, he says this as though debating liberal views or questioning them or having open dialogue about them is some sort of capital offense. MSNBC is now appearing to scramble to save face following the backlash of this commentary, calling Dowd's words inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable. Sadly, what's equal parts shocking and utterly predictable is that this is not an isolated incident in the United States. Here in Canada, our taxpayer-funded propaganda machine, the state broadcaster CBC, has pulled a similar stunt. And before I continue on, maybe we can just play this little clip from the CBC, what they were saying.
It's exactly who you think it is.
It's one of
two. It's one of two people. Make your guess right now.
I mean, look, Charlie Kirk, and I don't say any of this to disparage him, but was a controversial, polarizing figure, right? The provocations that these university tours, he's going to these campuses, to sort of provocation and confrontation and debate and argument was a big part of what he did with this Turning Point USA. But he was very close to Donald Trump, who has ordered all U.S. flags to be lowered in honor of Charlie Kirk for his murder today. You can see right there. Is that the White House? I think that's the White House. So this speaks to his importance and central role to Donald Trump, Katie. I mean, look, Charlie Kirk.
Wow. And we'll get to more. There's a couple more clips of David Cochran there as well, who's host of Power and Politics on the state broadcaster. And so...
Hey, I'm going to ask Olivia to dig up a clip because I want to show what normal people's reactions are. The people who knew Charlie Kirk. Can you bring up the reaction from Megyn Kelly and Glenn Beck? Glenn Beck's kids were in the crowd that day, by the way. Bring that up. That's what normal people react to these things. That's how a human being. But to say that Charlie Kirk, his mere existence was provocation. No, people can defend themselves. Thank you for bringing this up. These are the two of them who knew Charlie very well, finding out live on air together that Charlie died.
They're reporting that Charlie has died. That he's dead. At the age of 31. Which he would have to be if that video was real.
There's no way he survived that. The only good thing is, it had to have happened quickly.
Right. Right. They're reporting.
They're trying to comfort themselves with the knowledge that it was fast. And then you have people like David Cochran saying, maybe he brought it on himself.
And
gross.
It doesn't stop there. This is just mere hours after it was confirmed that Charlie had succumbed to his injuries. The CBC dropped the headline, "Some of Charlie Kirk's most controversial takes."
My God.
I mean, talk about, I say it in the article, kicking a man when he's down. Instead of, mourning like we just saw from humans and people that knew Kirk personally, mourning that father, that husband, a friend, a defender of free speech, someone who engaged in respectful discourse. They dredged up these criticisms of liberal views as if, to capitalize on his death as some sort of like gotcha moment. Look at what will happen to you if these are your views. That's what the CBC brought you.
A normal publication would say, maybe they could have dug up the times where Charlie was threatened by somebody in the audience. Like, these are the times over the years where he was threatened by maniacs in the audience, was screamed at by them, and still reacted calmly and civilly. To show, instead they're trying to make Charlie the bad guy here, but he was the victim of a bad guy. And it was escalating over years and years and years. I was listening to Stephen Crowder this morning, and he was sort of going through all the times, because he is the guy who sits down at the table and says, "Prove me wrong," which is a discussion. And they would have stuff thrown at them. And if you could throw something at somebody, you could shoot them, right? It's the same. You could be that, if you can get that close and wing something at somebody, well, it's easy to shoot them. And he was going through all the times where he's just trying to have a civil discussion. People walk up, scream at him, and then assault him or his crew. And so it's a pernicious and systemic problem. And it's not going to get any better when the mainstream media keeps saying, well, you kind of brought it on yourself.
Mm-hmm. It truly adds fuel to the fire and just goes to show how compromised the state broadcaster here is in Canada. I mean, and our political supposed leaders haven't been much better. I want to point to a post from Anthony Housefather, Liberal MP, who really is subtly blaming well, not even subtly, he's blaming targeted, hateful rhetoric.
Yeah,
and
Anthony,
it really reeks of the same, tone deaf insinuations we heard from the CBC and MSNBC, veiled in some sort of like sympathy.
Yeah, he says he makes himself the victim here, obviously. And he was the only liberal to say something for hours and hours and hours and hours. But I wish he had actually kept his mouth shut. The murder of Charlie Kirk is a tragedy, and I pray for his family. I hope that those on this and other platforms that repeatedly personally attack people and incite hate against them look at this and see the potential real-life consequences of targeted hateful rhetoric. That phone call is coming from inside the house. You're not the victim on Twitter. Conservatives are the victims of violence in real life. Because somebody sent a hate tweet to you, like, grow up. You're not the victim. It's your side that's doing this. When you label everything hate and everything violence, people will react in kind. And that's what we're seeing over and over and over again. These people are ghouls. They're just ghouls.
Yeah, and Mark Carney simultaneously posts some clip from his nonsense interview about shifting mindsets on Canadian.
A low-level local podcaster. I checked yesterday, and it had like under 3,000 views for hours and hours and hours because nobody cares. Everybody was waiting for him to say something about a political assassination, even if you don't like Charlie Kirk. As a leader of a free country, next door to the Americans, our alleged best friends in the world, somebody very close to Donald Trump was just politically assassinated. Hello, Canada, you might want to say something. No, hours and hours and hours.
Hours and hours, yeah. Here's the clip. And then I think it was 2 hours prior to this, Pierre Poilievre had already posted, "We must all strongly denounce the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Political violence is never justified." And he called for the attacker to be brought to justice and free speech upheld.
Yeah, I mean, it was constant yesterday, right after it happened. It was Danielle Smith said something. Doug Ford, by the way, sent out a fundraising email. Of
course.
Danielle Smith almost instantly sent out a message of condolences. I think just about everybody in the Conservative caucus, from Michael Barrett to Michelle Rempel to Andrew Scheer, condolences to the family and denouncing political violence. This is my premier. Yours, send out a fundraising email. I'm saddened and horrified by the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Our hearts are with Charlie and his family. Political violence has no place in a free and democratic society and must be condemned without reservation. And let us remember, it is the same ideology attacking Danielle Smith for banning graphic pornography from schools and attacking her for banning men from women's sports that led to the death of Charlie.
Yeah, this is a sacred cow. The DEI, the trans sanity, you can't criticize this without facing actual hate and violence out in public, never mind what happens online. But I just wanted to maybe throw to another clip of David Cochrane. It's the last post that I embedded in that written piece, where he shamelessly victim blames Kirk once again, and proving that the CBC isn't really about journalism. It's incitement cloaked as sanctimony and sympathy. And he's joined on air with some NDP individual. I can't remember who this person is, but
this is who they got. They could have rounded up a conservative.
Right. Like, listen to this. It's crazy talk.
Jordan, just you touched on this, and I talked a little about this with Katie Simpson. I just wanted to cycle back on it where you flagged it. Just the inflection point this could be, right? The triggering moment. Bad choice of words. We talk about Charlie Kirk because he's well known, politically connected. There was a shooting at a Denver high school today in Colorado, or in a suburb in Denver, where 3 kids were shot. I mean, the gun problem in America persists, but the issue with someone like Charlie Kirk is that constituency head and what they may do and how this event could be a flashpoint there.
That's right, and of course, I think it's also going to matter a great deal what the president does. And we don't know yet what is going to happen, but it's clear that this attack was not just an attack on Charlie Kirk as an individual, but also probably, we don't know motive yet, but we can assume it was related to his role in the MAGA movement more generally. And so President Trump, who may well feel that this is a provocation, or an excuse to double down on some of his other efforts to quell dissent within the United States.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of things we don't know. There was some early reports about someone being in custody. There were pictures on social media of a man being detained. That person is not the suspect.
Yeah, this part, listen to this.
Shooter. So if you've seen those things, cleanse that from your memory. There was a lot of bad information in
memory hole yourself
like this. And so we're not going to speculate in the absence of more information. We're going to take a quick break. And when the power panel comes back, we're going to try to get back to Canadian politics. Mark Carney, his caucus, they're meeting in Edmonton.
Just when I think that the state broadcaster in Canada can't get any worse, here we are. The gaslighting and the psychological manipulation that you would have to be under to say that this is somehow going to be, like, depending on how Trump takes this, instead of calling out political violence, is absolutely insane to me. Like, this is so disturbing and disgusting that these are the mental gymnastics that are being broadcasted on air, and I have to pay through that through unwitting taxation. This is disgusting.
If David Cochrane's worried about what the conservative movement is going to do next in light of this shooting, David, I promise you, I will do everything I can to make sure that you are unemployed. That's what I'm going to do. I will do everything in my power to push forward the idea that the CBC should be completely defunded of tax dollars. And if that means that you don't have a job, I don't care. In fact, that's the cherry on the top of the cake. Okay. You know what? If he's worried about what conservatives are going to do, conservatives didn't do anything last night except pray and wonder about their own safety. No shops were boarded up. No riots happened. No mobs took to the streets burning their communities, because that is sure as hell what happens on the other side when this sort of stuff happens. And when I say this sort of stuff, I mean a death that is suddenly becoming a flashpoint. I would never compare what happened to Charlie with George Floyd. But if you want to compare things, look right there. Look right there. Conservatives didn't do anything. But there are a lot of people after this week who have moved from moderate conservative to hardline. And they want people like David Cochrane to lose their jobs. I'm one of them. I don't want what he said there to be illegal, but I want everybody to hear it, because these are the people who are our self-appointed moral and intellectual superiors, and they hate us. They think of us as animals that can't control ourselves, that can't think our way out of a problem, that will react poorly, that we will burn our cities. We didn't, David, but I will do everything I can to make sure that not another tax dollar drips into that bloated, decaying, sinking ship of the CBC.